Right, good morning, welcome back. Now today, the bearing puller. Recently I've been using this to yank the bearings out of the Husqvarna wheels, and it stirs up the same old questions as it always does. Where'd you get it from? Have you got a link? How much is it? And I think that shows a few of you are toying up whether it's worth investing in one. They're not cheap. I mean, we buy tools for our toolkits the whole time. Spanners, screwdrivers, sockets, pliers and grips, but what about the engineering tools we use a lot less often that often cost a lot more money? Are they worth the investment? Well look, at least if you know how to use it, you might decide that for yourself. So today, a short tutorial on the blind bearing puller. Okay, contents of the box are divided into three areas. Over here, we've got all of the different size bearing dies. These are just like a little cylinder with a cut on the end, cross cut like a Brussels sprout. Take the relevant size for your bearing, measure the hole in the bearing. If it's 25mm, use the 25mm die. That inserts into the bearing. It's because it's cut on the end, the 4 quarters, if you like, they move separately, only a tiny bit. That's enough just to squeeze that into the bearing and it pings in on the other side. I'll show you close up in a minute. Once it's in, you can then spread those end pieces so they lock into the bearing. That's how we get hold of the bearing to pull it out. And once it's locked in place, there are then 2 methods of actually dragging it out. One is simplicity itself, using this, just a slide hammer. You connect that thread to the end of the die, job done, and then just hammer it out. That doesn't need instruction, but this little thing does. This is the bridge puller, and that's what I want to demonstrate today. This little thing is what you see me use loads of times when dragging bearings out. It's a calm and simple way of doing it without damaging anything. No violence involved, no hammering. You just turn a thread and it extracts it gently. There's no point in talking about it and explaining how it's done. Let's use the Husqvarna's sprocket carrier that I haven't changed the bearings yet. We'll draw those out using this. I'll show you how it's done. Right, before we get into extracting the actual bearings out of that, I want to show you fingertip close exactly how these little dies work, these little split dies. It's not obvious how they grip the inside of the bearing until you see it up close. I'll show you here and you'll see what I mean. It's ever so simple. Okay, firstly the bearing itself, that hole there, 17mm. Measure that first of all, and then you take a 17mm die. So that is the same size as that. And as you can see, the end of it's split into 4, and therefore flexible. So take the die at an angle and just squeeze it into the bearing like that. And if you keep pushing it through, it'll work its way and snap in. There we are. Now, as you can see, looking at it close, it moves around quite nicely in there, nice and free, but it doesn't come out because super close up, there's this little edge, just a little lip, and it sits neatly, as you can see, in the chamfer on the inner ring of the bearing, and it doesn't pull out. And to lock it in place, take this little spreader pin inside the die, and as you screw it in, it expands these 4 quarters so they lock into the bearing. And obviously you don't have to do it too much, but as you wind that in, it opens up those 4 quarters and your bearing is lock solid. And you do that with a couple of big spanners so you get it absolutely lock solid. And then you've got an absolute purchase on that bearing, and there's no way that will split or slip out of the bearing. It will draw it out nicely. So let's do it in action. Now this is the spreader for the 20mm, tapered end, spreads those 4 little quarters as I said. Drop that in, screw it into place. Now it doesn't need any more than a nip like that. Don't overdo it. Right, now we've got something meaningful to pull on. We set up the little bridge over it like that, and then we put the pin down through, screw it into the die, and then we turn the 2 opposing nuts and it will extract it out. But before I put those 2 metal feet on this painted factory surface. I'm going to put a couple of little bits of inner tube rubber just on that painted surface there to protect it so it don't dig into the paint. There we are. Got it. Right. Take a little bit of time to set everything up. Have a faff about with it. Get it nice and square and regular, and everything's absolutely safe and it's ready to go. And obviously eye protection, because there's going to be forces breaking free in a minute. Now we turn this nut. We hold the bolts still so it doesn't rotate. As we turn the nut, one extracts away from the other. That pulls the pin up, the die and the bearing will all come upwards. But obviously that bearing is in there and it's been in there a long time. So it's going to break free with a little bit of a pop. So to start with, you'll get a bit of resistance, just push against it. As soon as it goes crack, then you can use what I'm going to use, a ratchet spanner. Just keep turning and it will slowly extract the bearing all the way out, nice and calmly, like this. There we go, one bearing. All right, as you see, that broke free real easy. Sometimes they're proper stuck in there and you have to really give it some welly, but that one came out lovely. Now to get them out, it's a reverse of putting them in. Just take your two spanners and release the spreader. And that way, just undo that. Take the spreader pin out. And then your die is ready to squish again. So you can just press it with your thumb and that should come out of the bearing. Sometimes handle of a screwdriver and pop it straight out. There we are. One bearing extracted with no drama whatsoever. Really easy. Now, thankfully, this being a BMW, over-engineered as ever, there's a second bearing in there. So I get a chance to demonstrate this one more time. So let's do the other one. Right, there we are. Now, I hope that's a little bit of insight into how to use this kind of garage kit. It's not difficult, as you can see. It's a very simple, straightforward process, and it's a much kinder and more sympathetic way to draw the bearings out without all the drama of a hammer and chisel. Now, personally, I'm now going to put the new bearings in and reassemble everything. I'll leave you with that. I'll drop a link in the description to this, and I will see you next time.